Less than 30 seconds now in regulation. Could this take extra time? 16 seconds. Here's Dyal. Send it up at the point, Jay Lalu. Tall midget now, but Matt, 6 seconds, 5, Dalfan coming out. He gets around him, 2 seconds. He's got to do it quick. Shoot, the scores, 1 second left.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the Season 9, start of the Season 9 episodes of the Faceoff, the Forecheck, the
foreskin,
the Dick Dyal pile,
the Dick Dyal riff on
whatever you want to call it, yeah. So yeah, it's the 9th episode overall, first episode of this season, so that's pretty cool. We wanted to do one earlier in the season, but a little bit of trouble getting that going, but we're here. We did it finally, and it's on a Thursday too. We didn't have to push it to Friday this week.
Yeah,
so that's a benefit, you know. It's a positive. So yeah, we're here.
Yes.
Week 1 is in the books. There's a lot of things to go over. We're gonna try and keep the show shorter this season. I'll bring up the agenda
apparently
here
people don't like it when we spend 3 hours talking about this, so you know.
Well, I mean,
anyway.
in fairness, we do go over a lot of things, like, multiple times over. And sort of draw things out a little bit more. So, like, I understand from that perspective. But, yeah, apparently, you know, we don't provide that much content, you know, according to certain people. So, we'll try to keep the alleged Dallas circle jerk to a minimum. Even though, you know, I feel like we do a pretty good job of not talking about our team ever. But so yeah, I mean, we were actually kind of looking forward to being on different teams this season so we could avoid that. And here we are now, both on the same team again after the draft and trades and whatnot. So
and especially if you don't have a guess for when we do predictions, like fuck, there's gonna be days with like nothing is predicted at all.
Yeah, no guess again this week. So we're looking at predictions that are again going to be Dallas-less. That makes sense. I don't know how else to say that better. So anyway, all right. So let's go over what we're going to be talking about today.
You need to change this on the ticker down low. It says Philly 6, Philly 3 on today.
Good catch. Good catch.
I saw chat and I was like, damn, Philly was good.
Yeah, they beat themselves today. That's impressive. Alright, hold on. Let me try and change this. Who'd they play? They played Pittsburgh, right? Yeah, they played Pittsburgh. I've got the double hockey question mark there too. Don't feel like removing that just because I need that as a spacer. But yeah, no major news so far, so you don't see any news down there, but you will see the scores. It's tough to fit the RSL and JSL scores down there too. With everything, I run out of space. Even trying to condense everything down, there's no real way to get it all in there and look nice, so we're probably going to go another season of not having those on there. But we'll try and have some more people on from the RSL and the JSL a bit more frequently than we did last season. Maybe do like 15-minute spotlights on how the league is going. But for today, we won't do that. For today, we will briefly go over some of the trades that have happened. I want to just clarify one thing on the Fuzzy Wuzzy suspension. We'll look at the games that happened this past week. We will look at the standings and where we'd be at if the playoffs started today. Standings are kind of weird, actually. Some of the weirdest standings I think we've ever seen after 1 week. We'll go on a team-by-team breakdown like we usually do, and then we'll make predictions. So we're eliminating that final sort of, I don't know what to call it, the final topic we usually do that's irrelevant to the league itself, usually something different. We're going to probably eliminate that for most of this season, seeing as that usually pushed it another like 45 minutes in length, and while that stuff I love to sit here and talk about, a lot of people probably don't want to sit here and listen to me talk about it, so maybe I'll make those as like a separate thing on my own, just post those to the YouTube instead of just like streaming them or something. I don't know. Whatever. So we'll go down the trades. Dick, you want to read off the trades we had so far this season?
I can. Let's open the subreddit. Sure.
It should be in the show notes.
Oh, yeah, show notes. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
right
those
at the
things.
top. There should be in the show notes there. I put it there hoping you would see it.
Yo, so we're gonna review the trades right now. So you got not led to Chicago, bless you, for Tickle to Quebec, bless you. That's a good trade in my opinion. You got meat sale to us, and then Cap from us to Tampa. That left Tampa with Nina as their starter, and then Claude and Cap up on front, which led to 3 goals where both of them where Claude scored all 3 and then Cap assisted all 3. So that's worked out pretty good for them so far. And then you had Leafs and Nina to Chicago for K-Bomb and Fuzzy. In my opinion, Chicago won that deal. So Tampa gets a goaltender who's like a star goaltender, but they also get a player who is likely not going to show very much because of what happened this season. But then Chicago gets a goaltender who this past night fucking played amazing. One of the best games I think I've seen Nina play since Season 7 playoffs and Season 5 RSL.
K-Bomb did get a shutout tonight, though, so you got to give him credit there.
Yeah.
First shutout of the Season 9. So.
I'm not saying like it's like K-Bomb's terrible. Like K-Bomb is a star goalie. Like he's one of the top goaltenders in the league. But then you also got to look at like what's coming back and forth. And with Leafs and Nina going to Chicago and K-Bomb have going to Tampa, I'm gonna give the edge to Chicago on there. And then you got Pizza to Dal to us, and then from Misty us to Pittsburgh. This is the only trade I feel Dalfan did that I think I feel bad about. Because Misty literally scored a goal 20 seconds left to go up in a scrim, and then we traded him. So
yeah, that's
like immediately after, I felt really bad when that happened.
I did too. I can give some insight into that, which was that Mr. U is he's an offensive player in style, and he's always tried to be that. But he's generally the type of player who would be willing to fit in a defensive role, even though it really doesn't suit his play style at all. And Dalfan recognized that, and we really needed another defenseman at that point in time, and it wasn't worth putting Mr. U through another season of playing a position that he doesn't feel comfortable in, and it's a position that's going to minimize his ability to impact the game. So it made sense to get someone like Pizza who can play defense and has played it before in the LHL recently and is not as opposed to it, to fill that role. So that was really the driving force behind that. Plus, I think Pittsburgh felt like they needed somebody to play offense there with a bit more experience, given that one of the people that has been starting for them recently, or has gotten a lot of playtime for them recently, has been Marchie, who's been around for a long time, but not really been in the LHL as much. So I think they're preferring the sort of veteran leadership, so to speak, of Mr. U in that situation.
Yeah, moving on to the next one, you got Slim to Chicago for Zod to Quebec. This is a trade where I think both teams come out with a good player. Slim he's a veteran defenseman who can be a stable man on the defense. And you got Zod, who really hasn't been able to crack any lineup at all up through his entire career, minus RSL lineups. And him on Quebec, it's gonna be some nice depth, especially when Matt is in there or if they're missing Otto. He can go up there. But he didn't play this last night, and then they lost 3-0, didn't they, to Tampa?
Yes, they lost 3-0.
I'm not saying Zal would have they would have won if Zal was on the ice, but I'm like, it's a thing. Zod was there, he didn't get played, so yeah, that's unfortunate for Zod.
I'm sure he'll earn his opportunity, especially on a team where there's been a lot of question marks about the attendance of their players and whether or not that was going to hold up throughout the season. So no matter what, I feel like he'll sort of earn some playing time here or there by default, and hopefully they give him a chance to earn a more significant role in perhaps like a starting position. So, but yeah, I think that recaps all the trades, right? I don't think there's any other trades that we missed. I'm pretty sure that's all of them. Which by this point in time, honestly, is actually a lot. To have 5 trades in the first week of the season. And I guess you include the preseason too, because some of those trades happened in the preseason. That's impressive. And there were some ones that a lot of people I think thought was questionable too, like the meat cell Cap one. On the surface, didn't make sense to somebody who looked at it and was like, "Oh well, Dalfan's the goalie. Why are they trading for a goalie and trading away Cap where they don't have another forward?" Because at that point in time, our forward was going to be either Mr. U or Tony. After that, But of course, Dalfan has stepped in and filled that role, and I'm sure we'll see a little bit of Pizza there too at some point, and probably Tony in the future, and we got Self-Plug as well to fill in that. So, but yeah, Cap I thought was an interesting pickup for Tampa. I was a bit surprised that they focused on him, mostly because they already had Crab and Claude, and I figured Claude would be happy with that. But they saw the opportunity to get K-Bomb as well in sort of a sequence of trades. So Claude got the goalie he wanted and got another forward, and wound up having to give up Meatsale, who again is a stellar goalie so far, but it's not like K-Bomb is a downgrade at all from that. Like Meatsale and K-Bomb are two of the better goalies in the league right now. And then who else did he give up? Oh, he gave up Leafs and Nina, which we sort of went over on the surface right now anyway. Seems like Chicago won the trade, but there's 25 games in this season, so there's a lot of time for things to pan out, and we'll see how it goes.
It's going to be interesting to see how the trades work out long term for all the teams.
Yeah, they're really early. Usually we get like bigger trades like this like later on in the season towards the deadline. A lot of times the GMs sort of want to roll with what they drafted for a little bit, see how it works out, and then make a decision about trading stuff. So again, surprising to see so much trading going on so early. Chicago involved in 3 trades actually. They're the team that's traded the most. They traded away 4 of the players they drafted, so only half of their players right now are players that they drafted to the team. And actually that's not even true either, because they dropped Gauch and GK, so Lucic might be the only one left on that team that they drafted. Lucic and Johnny.
Yeah?
I think are the only 2 left on that team that they drafted. Yeah, they're the only 2 left on the team that's all drafted. That's pretty crazy. We'll get into that a little bit more when we get to Chicago. So last thing I wanted to go over here before we get into reviewing this past week's games was I wanted to look at the player suspension to Fuzzy and just briefly clarify that. He had originally been suspended for a full season, and that included the playoffs and everything like that. So we had gone through with that decision because of his past history of trying to game the system of the draft, which he's done twice in the past before this incident. This incident being the 3rd time out of 6 times he was draft eligible. So basically every other season he was trying to cheat the draft somehow. So we felt like a hefty suspension was warranted. After talking to him and looking at his sign-up and whatnot, and clarifying a few things with some GMs and him himself, we did wind up allowing him to play 10 games of his choosing throughout the season, so it's effectively a 15-game ban. We wanted to go a little bit higher than that, but if you bring it up to like 18, 19, 20 around there, then you can only play in about 5 games in the season anyway, assuming you can make those games. And at that point, like, what's the point? You may as well just be suspended for the whole season. So we backed it down a little bit. He's allowed to play in 10 games in total during the regular season, and then he can play any playoff game he wants. I don't believe he's shown up yet. Pretty sure he hasn't played 1 game yet, so he's still got 10 games that he can play. He's said he wasn't going to play at all, but I don't know that I 100% believe that. I mean, things can change. Like, this season won't be over, and the regular season won't be over until like a week or 2 into January. So there's plenty of time for him to change his mind on that. So yeah, that's about it for the news portion. Unless, can you think of anything I'm forgetting?
No. Alex, I think you're pretty good right now.
I can't think of anything else that happened that's like worth talking about.
I mean, no, not really. There's been no more trade rumors from Jack Diver though. I've been interested to see what's happening with that though. I'm kind of I miss that.
Jackie Diver.
To see that.
I do know who it is. I'm not going to announce who it is. Damn. I do know who it is, as does DVD. We both know. We had to speak to him about spreading like false rumors and stuff like that and causing drama on the subreddit, so we know who it is.
You guys actually had to talk to him?
Yes. I don't know why he's been that quiet recently, but at the same time, it's not like there's been a lot of activity lately. I don't believe in terms of like trade requests or trade blocks or GMs trying to move people. I think sort of the dust is settled on that early rush of trades, and I think we'll see after maybe like another week or two if certain teams are still struggling. Like as an example, I'm not trying to pick on Tampa Bay here, but Tampa started 0-2, so we'll look at them. Like if they continue to struggle, and
I mean, they had a nice showing tonight.
oh yeah, they did. They won tonight. They look good. But if they only get like 1 or 2 wins out of their first like 9 games, I'm not saying that this is gonna happen. Just as like showcasing, like if they start to fall behind early like that, these GMs have proven they're aggressive in their decision making and they're willing to make a decision before it's too late. Whereas in the past we've seen sort of the opposite from GMs. So I'd expect that if teams start to run into issues here in weeks like 3 or 4, that we're going to start seeing some trade rumors popping up again. So I'm sure we'll see him back more active a bit later on. There's no like injuries or anything to report either. It's like, what do you?
It's kind of hard to have injuries. Let's be honest.
What do you report? So I think we've only ever had I think 2 or 3. I know Hesse was injured and couldn't play because of his wrist.
Yeah.
Yes, that happened season 6, and I know Sweaty like season 2 or season 3 had a wrist injury as well and also couldn't play because like he couldn't move the mouse or whatever.
Yeah.
So we have had injuries that have kept players out of the game before, which is kind of funny, honestly.
I mean, Slim
yeah,
last season.
Yeah, Slim. Yeah, that's true. Yep. So that would be a third, and then there was somebody else who I can't remember right now.
You and your alcohol addiction. That's something we can talk about for a Keep Play
my
Little
God.
Game.
Yeah, my alcohol addiction.
All I'm saying is that for every game you have to have a beer. That's all I'm saying.
Before every playoff, like back-to-back games, yes, I have 1 beer. Is that a problem? Does that bother
Fucking
you?
alcoholic. You're an honest alcoholic.
It works out pretty well.
I mean,
we've won 2 cups while I've been doing it.
I mean, you also been intoxicated, so that's the thing.
Oh
like,
my
God.
God.
You better not go fucking driving.
This is a joke. Alright, while you're trolling, I'm gonna bring up the schedules we could talk about last week.
Bring up the schedule for your fucking drinking. Yeah, even Burn. Dal, you have a problem. Look at that.
Oh my God.
You have a problem.
I don't need this right now.
Yeah, go over to
Alright,
go crawl back in the bottle.
So, looking at... I should go get a drink right now, honestly, after having to deal with you. Like, Jesus, you drive me to drink. It's you. It's this guy. It's his fault.
If I get my mom to yell up that you have a problem, will you stop drinking?
No.
Oh my God.
No.
Well,
not unless she comes on the show. She comes on the show, then that's fine.
What if I get her to?
Oh my God. I don't know if I can handle that right now.
Alright.
Okay. Let's look at last week's games. So started off on Sunday, opening day, and we got Pittsburgh versus Quebec. We got Philly versus Chicago, and Dallas versus Tampa. Were the 3 games you can see there. Pittsburgh won 5-2. That was an interesting game because neither Timu nor Matt made it to that game. So both Jesus Christ, I can't words right now. Both first rounders. I'm gonna have to talk really slowly to get all of this out. Both first rounders were not present for the game, as Matt and Timu were not there. There we go. And interesting to note as well is that Gabe's actually moved back to defense. That was a decision he made.
You mean he's playing not as far up as he used to?
Well, okay, like he's being considered a defenseman for the season. We'll get more into that later on when we look at their team in depth. But yeah, Gabe was playing defense that game. Mr. U and Marchie were on offense. Trev on defense besides Gabe, and Proper in net. And Marchie actually lit it up. Marchie scored 4 goals in that game, and pretty much single-handedly won the game for them. Although Proper has been pretty great so far this season. Honestly, he's been quietly doing a really, really good job. So he was also big in that game. What I found interesting was that Quebec was actually down 4-0 at the start of the third. So like it was out of hand pretty quickly. I think they went up like 2-0 or 3-0 after the first period, and then sort of fell off a little bit offensively, and the Quebec team was able to score a couple goals there at the end of the game to bring it back a little bit closer. But yeah, not really a great way to start off the season for them. Meanwhile, for Pittsburgh, though, it was a fantastic game. After being last place in the preseason, it was a great way to start the regular season. And that brought us to the 7:50 game, which was Philly 7-2 over Chicago, as you can see there. And Philly absolutely tore it up. I mean, a lot of people expected them to be a defensive powerhouse, boasting Zam, Taze, and Briz.
Zam, Taser, Crucial.
I almost said Gabe because I was still thinking of.
Gabe's on Philadelphia. He's Briz is the GM for Pittsburgh. He drafted team defense now. That's new one from Jack Diver.
Anyway, a lot of people expected them to be really strong defensively because they had the best defensive pairing from last season and the best goalie from last season. I mean, the award obviously went to Kevon, but best goalie from the playoffs, we'll say. So there was a lot of expectations that would be an incredibly defensive team, which I think they have been so far. You can sort of see there the most goals they've given up was 4, looks like. Yeah, they gave up 2, 3, and 4. So not quite as overbearing as it was for them at the start of last season. I remember they also went 6-0 to start last season. They're 3-0 so far now.
They're can I peep in here for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
They so their shots against per game is 8.3, which is up there in the middle of the pack for shots against right now. It's actually one of the more near top. To put in perspective, we currently Dallas Stars at 7.33, which is the lower shots against in the league at the current moment.
Well, not all the saves are in yet.
They also have the pardon.
Not all the saves are in yet, so you got to consider that. There are teams, I think, like ours that don't have any saves put in yet, so that number will be different once they're all put in.
I'm just saying, those are shots against, you know, it's different.
Look, man.
They have.
I understand where you're going with this.
Lowest goals against, yeah. So like goals for and goals against. But anyway. Actually, sorry, just goals against. They have the second lowest goals against.
I was going to say, they haven't scored lower than 5 goals this season. They have 7 goals, 5 goals, and 6 goals. So they're averaging 6 goals a game, which is insane. That's an insane clip. And you obviously, I think it would be fairly safe to say that they're not going to continue that level. But Zam and Jay Lalu have been absolutely shredding it so far. They've got 22 points between them, and again, we'll get into that a little bit more. But I think it was a 6-point game for Jay Lalu that game. He had like 4 goals and 2 assists or something like that. Yeah. He had a 6-point game. Zam had a 4-point game. Like Taze has only had like 3 points in the season, and it's like he doesn't even have to contribute because Zam and Jay Lalu have been so dominant. But yeah, that game was a pretty big disappointment for Chicago, who had everyone there for their team. They had their starting roster there, and they just could not get anything going at all. I think it was Tall who got 1 point, Leafs got 2, and then Lucic didn't even get on the board. So they were pretty heavily blanketed despite being quite a talented team offensively, having Leafs, Lucic or Krejci and Tall there. So a bit surprising to see. Nina had some issues that game too. It was a bit of a weak start from Nina, but Nina's been pretty great ever since. So hard to really say it's been too much of an issue. And then that brought us to the Dallas-Tampa game, which, like the previous two, was a little bit out of hand. But that was probably the closest game of the night. I think we scored like to go up 4-2 at the start of the third period or something like that. So like that was a pretty close game the majority of the way through, where the other two were actually much more lopsided, like the scores appear. So, but yeah, Dallas got 1 win there, started Tampa Bay off on an early losing streak, but we flipped the table tonight where we've now lost 2 and they've won 1. So
yeah, it's been unfortunate.
Disappointing.
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, but anyway.
That's okay. Philly on Tuesday. They played Tampa, who we just spoke about, and Tampa came out blazing, honestly. That game was 4-4 until about like 30 seconds left or something like that, when Dildo, of all people, scored the game-winning goal. Dildo got a hat trick that game. So like they're getting production all over the place from people that just like nobody would have expected necessarily before the draft to be this like dominant. But they've been getting it from all angles right now. JLo had another 4 points that game. But Tampa kept it really close, and like I said, it was about 30 seconds or 40 seconds when the game-winning goal was scored. It's a really heartbreaking way to wind up losing that game for Tampa, especially where Philly had looked so good in that first game. To come back after losing to Dallas on Sunday and play them that well was a really good sign, and they capped off that momentum tonight. But Quebec and Dallas played, and Matt was there. Yeah, Matt was there. Matt ended up getting 5 goals in that game. Otto had a goal and 3 assists or 4 assists. So the two of them were all over the place and very dominant. That was another one that probably a little bit closer than the score looked like. Dallas was up 3-2 before Matt scored with 0 seconds left at the end of the second period. So we went into the third period tied 3-3. 2 sort of early goals, and then defense kind of broke down, and we had to just sort of give up on defense to try to score those game-tying goals, and wound up letting in those 6th and 7th ones in just out of desperation, really more than anything. But it was a really great showing by everyone on Quebec, and I mean they flat out dominated. Like they balled. It's a really talented team once you have everybody there. So from top to bottom. But again, the question of attendance throughout the rest of the season, like they're going to have those games where they have everybody there and they tear it up, and they're going to have games where they're going to run into issues. And it kind of feels a lot like Chicago of last season, where like there's a lot of talent, but attendance issues are going to prevent the lineup from ever being consistent.
Yeah, and I can see that happening.
That was a major problem for Chicago when it came to the playoffs, because they just did not have the chemistry develop between their players, just because of how infrequently they had played together, to really get things going in a 7-game series. And that's what ultimately was a big factor into them losing. So hopefully Quebec doesn't meet the same fate, which I don't think they will. I mean, I think they have plenty of talent, plenty of experience, plenty of leadership on that team, that it shouldn't be an issue for them. They should be fine. So, and it's too early to tell at this point anyway, so it's all just speculation. And then Tuesday was capped off with a 4-1 win by Chicago over Pittsburgh, the Penguins, Gabe and the Penguins. Again, Timu was not there. Pretty sure everybody from Chicago played, but again, yeah, Timu was not there for Pittsburgh, and that, while it wasn't an issue for them on Sunday, it proved to be pretty costly for them on Tuesday, as they only managed 1 goal, which was Gabe from defense. So they're having a bit of an issue in terms of production. Changed a little bit tonight, where they wound up scoring 3 goals, and Timu did play, but Timu only got 1 goal, so still an issue of offense on that team. Meanwhile, Chicago got right back on track, and I think Lucic had 3 points, or Tal had 3 points, and I think it was 8 points between Leafs, Lucic, and Tal in that game. So pretty good showing by them. And another good showing by Nino, which was really nice for him to build up that confidence again after sort of a weak game against Philly. It was a really good motivational boost for him to get things going again. So, and we saw that again tonight, where we played them in the first game, and Nino looked a bit shaky early, to be fair, but he turned it on the longer the game went, and especially
Is this our game tonight?
Yeah, especially at the end of the third period and in overtime, he made some stellar saves. But you got to tip your hat to Mito, who did the same thing down the other end of the ice, and we don't have saves from either of the goalies yet at this point. But I'm expecting like 8 or 9 saves out of each of those goalies, just because of how insane they were playing. And it seems strange, I guess, because it was a 5-4 game, but that game was heavily influenced by how well both the goalies were playing. It was a really, really, like, it was an entertaining game, even though we were on the losing side of it. So, but yeah, Chicago dominated. They dominated. They played well the whole way through. The first period, we were incredibly lucky to get out alive, just because we had shots on net all over the place. We couldn't clear the puck out, but Meadsell was incredible and kept us in it at 0-0. And Nito kept us in it at the beginning, and Nina kept them in it at the end. So it was a interesting trade-off. But yeah, that was a game highlighted by goaltending, despite how high scoring it was. And Lucic got his first hattie of the season, actually. So good start for him after not scoring any points in the very first game. And then we got Philly and Pittsburgh, where Timu did show up tonight. So this was a full lineup versus a full lineup here, and Philly again ran the ace on defense with Taser, and Zam up on offense with Jalalu, and that proved to produce really well, as I think Jalalu and Zam each had 4 points again. So like they're doing insane work between the two of them. They won 6-3. So bit better from Pittsburgh, but still got some defensive issues I think they really need to work out. And not saying like the defensemen are playing bad, but like I don't think they're playing great team defense right now, which has been a big problem for them so far. And that's why they've given up at least 4 goals every game. They've given up 4, 5, and then 6 goals. So it's gradually been getting worse. And you feel bad for Proper Cheese, who's been stellar in net so far, honestly. Like I said earlier, quietly having a really good season. And that brought us to the last game of the night, which was Quebec and Tampa. And Tampa finally ended their, finally, it's only been 2 games, but ended their 2-game losing streak by beating a matless Quebec who looked shaky. Looked a bit shaky tonight. They were having a lot of trouble getting anything going, and as soon as they did, K-Bomb was there to just shut it down and turn it aside. Only 12 shots in total that game from both teams combined. So very low shot count from what we're used to seeing. Usually, average LHL game, you get about 16 or 17 shots, maybe even 18. That's pretty typical for an LHL game. So to only have 12 in a game is pretty surprising. So fairly defensive affair, but a lot of mistakes in that game. A lot of mistakes which weren't capitalized on. So nonetheless, Tampa came out on top. K-Bomb, first goalie to get a shutout this season, so shout out to him.
You mean shout out to him?
Wow, I see what you did there.
Anyway, here's Wonderwall.
Oh my god. Literally, you are a walking meme.
Adel just got me in the slot, doesn't give it to me, he does not.
So, we'll take a look at how the standings...
Game.
Oh my god. Take a look at how the standings look after all that. So we've only got 2 teams with a winning record right now, which is bizarre. We have 3 teams who are at effectively 1-2. We have an overtime loss, but it's still 1-2. 1 team at 3-0, 1 team at 2-1, and 4 teams at 1-2. So very, very strange looking setup so far, where right now 2 playoff teams would have losing records if they were to start today. So that's just bizarre. I don't believe we've ever had a start like this before. I think we've seen some interesting starts, but usually you wind up with like 2 teams that are like 3-0 or something like that, or 2-1, and then 2 teams that are like 0-3 at the bottom. So so far anyway, looks like things have been pretty even throughout the league in terms of the standings. I mean, if you look at the individual games, there hasn't been as many really close games, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we haven't seen teams really learn how to play with each other yet. We only had a 2-game long preseason this time around instead of a usual 4.
Well,
or it was a 3-game preseason, wasn't it? Yeah, it was 3.
Yeah, the 4th game on Thursday got taken up for the Canada USA Series.
Yeah.
Canada, by the way.
So a little bit of a slower start. But again, 25 games this season, so a lot can change. And just because the team is hot right now, like we saw Philly last season, went off to a 6-0 start, doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be hot at the end. Philly obviously did make it to the playoffs and made it to the finals ultimately, but there's a lot that can change. I mean, we saw probably a better example is Atlanta that lost their first 7 games, and in the end, were only 2 games out of a playoff spot after the 20th game,
but
and
that was
turned it
also
around.
a lot of trades too. That was, several trades there involved in that.
There were a lot of trades, but nonetheless, I mean that team did one of the most incredible turnarounds you've ever seen, and they had the 2nd best record in the league after the trade deadline. And I think it was the 3rd best record in the league after the first 7 games. So they were, despite what their record showed, much better as the season went on, and I'm expecting we'll see similar things happen with a lot of the teams here. So you never know. You never know. It's too early to tell. And like we've already seen with Tall and Chicago, they only have 2 players that they drafted. So
yeah, lots of
the
trades.
team is already very different, and could be even more different depending on how things shape out. So
I mean, Tall is it's a rookie GM, and I personally thought he was going to be more conservative with his trades, but that's already been disproven quite heavily as they were involved in 3 trades.
yeah, we'll start getting into Chicago here. We'll get into the team by team review at this point. I don't have saves for him tonight, and I don't have saves from whoever it was they played, which I can't remember. Us, right? That's right. I want to block that out of my memory.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. We played tonight.
We don't have saves from Nina or Mitchell, so their shot percentage, their goals against average, their saves per game, same thing with Dallas, won't look accurate. So just because it says they have 5.67 shots per game is not true. They're going to have significantly more than that. So just for everyone who is watching this, just take that into account. And we will take that into account here as we evaluate them. So still a negative team so far in terms of goal differential, which is weird given that they're one of the only 2 teams with a winning record, but they have a negative goal differential. So not that often you see that, but they've been fairly good offensively. I mean, you're scoring a little over 3.5 goals per game, which is pretty good. They're giving up a bit too much defensively so far, and that's been a big problem for them. When you get the save count in there again, I'm expecting that number to be well over 30 shots against in total. I'm expecting like 8 or 9 saves from Nina with how he played, which would bring that total to like 32, and that's almost 11 shots against per game, which is way too many right now. We saw, I think it was Philly last season set the 5v5 record at like just under 7, and the average team last season was like somewhere between 8 and 8.5 shots against per game. So they're like way above where they need to be. So I think that's been the biggest problem for them so far is cutting down on the shots, because right now Nina's having to face a lot, and I think you'd see a lot more success from that team as a whole if they were able to cut down on that number. But offensively, their numbers probably look a little bit skewed just because they really didn't get much going in their very first game of the season. But I fully expect that to turn around and them to be one of the more offensively talented teams in the league, just given the players on that roster. Like, you look at those top 3, Tall, Lucic, and Leafs, and those are 3 players that are in the top like 7 or 8 performers consistently throughout 5v5. So I expect big things from them. You were talking about Tall as a GM. How do you think he's done so far on the whole?
I mean, he's got himself a nice offensive pairing. Well, he's got himself a nice like all-around roster with himself, Lucic, Leafs, and Nodled. Nodled came back well tonight after. I mean, I'm surprised Nodled's playing as well as he is after his suspension last season. He's coming back strong. Leafs is playing good. So is Lucic. Nina surprised. I think he surprised me with how well he played in the overtime. It was astounding. And then his defense could be with Johnny Hockey. Johnny Hockey's good, but I think it could be a bit better. But Slim's gonna help out with that workload down there. I think all around the roster's been good. My main thing is I'm really surprised at all the trades he's done. I did not expect this many trades by this time in the season, and B 3 trades to come from Chicago.
Yeah, he's been very aggressive, like we said earlier, not conservative by any means. He's been going out there and making trades, feeling around. I think Claude's been up there too, and McJabba. The 3 of them have definitely been the most active of all the GMs, really trying to like get a handle on what's available, what trades are good, what trades are feasible that they could get. And I mean, they've done a pretty good job so far. I think it's a bit too early to judge a lot of these trades just because we've only got 3 games to play from. But it wouldn't be fun if we didn't judge them yet. So you gotta judge them a little bit. So not much playing time for Slim. I think he's seen only 5 minutes in each of his games. So we'll have to see a bit more from him. Also, Notled has only made 1 game so far, so it's really hard to evaluate that. But Leafs does have 4 points so far in the season, whereas you've got, I don't even remember who it was that went to the other team now. I can't even. Fuzzy, that's right, Fuzzy, who hasn't even played a game. So you're looking at Fuzzy and K-Bomb versus Leafs and Nina here, and they've got, Nina's even got a point, so they've got 5 points to the. Does K-Bomb have an assist? If he has an assist, they have 1 point between them. But K-Bomb and Fuzzy.
I can.
Yeah, he is an assist. He does have an assist. So yeah, so you take the goalies out, they each have an assist. They each have they'll have roughly the same save rate. I'm expecting Nina to be up there around 60 after the saves for tonight's game. So, or actually probably even a little bit higher. So they've been pretty much equivalent through both games. And if you look at their goals against average, Nina will probably have a better save percentage, but K-Bomb will have a better goals against average and better. No, he won't have a better win percentage. Nina will have the better win percentage. But K-Bomb has got the shutout. So basically where I'm getting at with this is so far the two of them have been kind of a wash effectively. And so you really have to look at, I think, Leafs versus Fuzzy, and the fact that Fuzzy hasn't played at all, whereas Leafs has got 4 points and has played in all 3 games, has really been a huge swinging factor over in Chicago's favor for that trade. But we'll see what happens. There's a long time to go in the season. So, and K-Bomb is the reigning best goalie winner from last season. So you expect big things from him, and I'm sure we'll get them.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting to see how all teams all the teams will go from this point on. I mean, you could go back to the point where Atlanta lost the first 7 games of the season, and they were 2 games out of a playoff spot. And then you could go on to the Philadelphia started off with a 6-game winning streak, and then squeaked into the playoffs. So there's lots of storylines that could easily change from here on out. It's gonna be really entertaining to see how each team grows and how each team changes on from this point.
Yeah. Just while I remember it, do you have the stream open?
Yeah, I have it open right now.
Okay. Yeah, just look out for people that want to contribute, because I know. We had some discussions on the subreddit lately about wanting to contribute in post-game discussion and everything like that. And I just want to make sure that we're providing people a platform to discuss things, because I know that was a bit of a complaint, and that was a bit of the reason why we're getting some of the box score post-game thread things that you see on the subreddit. So if you want to get involved in the show, if you want to ask questions or propose topics for us to talk about or provide input, we're always open to that. I may not get you in on the cast itself to actually talk, but nonetheless, any and all input is always welcome. We want to discuss with you guys, so if you could watch that Dick and look out for people that are interested in participating, that would be fantastic.
I will look out for people wanting to join the cast.
Alright, so we'll gloss over Dallas here. A bit of a weak start. I mean, for whatever reason, we were the early favorite. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. We're 1-2. We could start to be disappointed. So, nonetheless, yeah, we were the favorite at the start of the season. I don't really get why. I mean, I guess I do, because we had you, me, and Dalfan again. So, I mean, it sort of looks like it's going to be the same thing. But the reality is that there's been a lot of trades made, and right now we're starting 2 people pretty much nightly that don't have experience really being a starter yet. So I feel like people were overrating the impact that the 3 of us were going to be able to have. I do think we will be better than a 1-2 team, obviously.
Hopefully we'll be better than a 1-2 team.
Yeah.
Here's hoping.
I believe we will be, but yeah, I didn't really get why we were being called the favorite, just because I think if you look at the rosters of everybody else, I just think there's a lot of talent on other teams that sort of went under the radar a bit, or not necessarily under the radar, but aren't getting the attention that they deserve. I mean, you look at guys like Jay Lalu, who was a third rounder, and he's got 14 points right now. And we'll get to him when we get to Philly in a second. But like people like that, you never really considered in those like preseason and end of preseason like predictions, and we've remained at the top for a lot of people. And while I think we can be a good team, I certainly think we're far from the favorite right now. So if anyone wants to come on and express why they believe we were the favorite, or why they believed, I should say, or might still believe, if you still believe after the past 2 games, I'd be very interested in hearing it, because I don't really see it, but that's fine. So yeah, way too high on the goals against average. I mean, that's the big thing to take away from this right now. Is I think the only team that might have a worse goals against average would be Pittsburgh. I think. No, not even Pittsburgh.
Yeah, no, Pittsburgh is better. We have the worst. Nope, sorry, nope, no, that's us again. Yep, we have the worst in the entire league.
Yep, we have the worst. So actually, I felt like Pittsburgh had more.
No, Pittsburgh.
No, because they only let in 2. Yeah, they only let in 2 the first game. That's why. Yep. So that's correct. So yeah, unfortunately correct. So yeah, we're down there at the bottom right now, which is very disappointing, obviously, and definitely something we need to correct. We do have the second best offense, which is like, it feels very similar to the start of last season, where last season we were weak on the back end, but we're still scoring at a pretty high rate. We are actually in third right now because of that one loser point we got tonight. Yay, loser points.
Pity point.
Yay. So, but yeah, definitely something that's going to have to change for us to really find success here.
I thought we were going to go like this the entire season. Like squeak into the playoffs on the 4th seed, win the cup, ease peas. I thought that was the plan.
Let's get there first. Let's get there before you squeak in and win the cup. Let's make it there first. Let's take this one step at a time, Victor.
Oh my
God.
God.
Yeah, certainly expect. I mean, you see that 36% out of Meatsell. That's going to be higher. It's not going to be
Hopefully.
necessarily amazing, but it will be well above 50% after we get saves in for tonight. So that is a bit deceiving. The saves per game also looking like it's almost 2.5 is not true, just because again we're missing the saves. So, but yeah, a lot of issues in terms of preventing goals from being scored on us. And as much as that seems like it's a defensive issue, I really think the biggest problem on our team has been offense, which is weird if you're just looking at statistics. But Dalfan and I on offense have made a lot of costly mistakes that have really put the team in a bad position. And not only that, but we're getting a lot of opportunities and we're messing up on a lot of them, and not able to put some of them home that like we really need to in order to be winning these games. So a lot of that does fall on our shoulders, and I think so far we've been the biggest problem.
Yeah, trade Dolphin, trade Dial. Who needs them? Who needs these bums? Honestly.
So hopefully we get it figured out. I mean, I have faith in both myself and faith in Dalfan that we can get things turned around. But I know a lot of people are surprised by the fact that Dalfan is playing offense here. I should update what it says on the stat sheet there. It has him as G/D, but he's really a primary forward and then defenseman second and goalie third now, which is interesting. So this is
he's
played a different position each of the past 3 seasons. Season 7 he was a goalie. Season 8 he was a defenseman and then /goalie. He played goalie at the end, but was a defenseman in the regular season for the most part. And then in season 9 here he's been a forward. So I think that might be the first time anyone's ever done that. Played in all 3 positions back to back and
won a cup. Well,
he's only won a cup twice, so I don't know where you're going with that.
And then,
so anyway, shout out to him for succeeding in all 3 roles at an LHL level. It's really hard to succeed in one role, and he's been effective in all 3. So you got to give him props for that. But we'll move on, just because I don't want to perpetuate this alleged Dallas circle jerk. There's really not much to suck on
honest,
right now.
It is a circle jerk.
There's really not much to suck on. There's 2 fat losses and the worst goals against average in the league to suck on. So there's not much to be proud of at the moment.
You say at least there's a lot to suck on. I mean, but, yeah.
It is, well, there's a lot, but there's not a lot that you want to.
I mean,
Just because it's there doesn't mean just because it's there, you know.
Speak for
Doesn't
yourself.
mean it's nice to look at. So we'll move it over to Philly, who's been far and away the best team in the league right now. Again, 2 seasons in a row, Zam's team has come out flying, and that was a joke on that was a pun on the Flyers.
Yeah, no, I like to
God.
make puns.
Oh my god, I'm
I
so
know, he does
good.
Wonderwall.
So this is a team that I don't think they made any trades. Unless did they trade for Dildo?
They traded. Nope, they didn't.
Yeah, they did not make
nothing.
any trades.
Yet,
Zam tends
yet.
to be one of the more conservative GMs in terms of trading goes, or in terms of trading. So
He tends to draft and then stick with that team.
yeah, I think that's fair, and I mean there's certainly no reason to right now, and we're plenty good enough in the preseason as well to not really warrant any necessary moves. And again, you know, it's early, so a lot of things can change, but they're averaging 6 goals a game, which is incredible. And if they were to keep up this pace, it would be the second best all time from a 5v5 team. So really, really impressive to see that they've been this dominant. And you gotta give all the credit in the world to Zam and Jalalu, who have been insane. Jalalu, the only player with double-digit points, is averaging over 4.5 points per game.
That's higher than what Matt's was
He's-
that one season, eh? That's higher than Matt's average, isn't it?
Yeah, he's 5 points higher than the next closest player,
Damn.
and he hasn't had less than 4 points in a game so far this season.
Yeah?
Yeah. He was 2-2, 2-2, and then 3-1, or no, 5-1 or something like that. Yeah, I think it was 5-1. Yeah, so he's been off the chain so far. It's been crazy, and again, that's a third rounder. That's a third rounder who went, I think it was the middle of the third round, or it may have been the very beginning. No, because he got drafted there. He got drafted there, so it was second pick of the third round, which would be 14th overall.
I'll confirm right now in a minute.
So he's outscoring everybody who went above him and everyone who went below him.
Jalalu went 14th overall.
Yeah,
in the
he's
third round, second pick.
been nuts. So if you're looking at like 3 stars of the week right now, he's far and away the #1 star. Like there's no way around that. He's been insane, and the impressive thing is like Briz and Taze and Ace has been playing defense alongside Taze for the most part. Actually, they don't even really have to do anything. Like the offense is just so suffocating that like it doesn't even matter, which is crazy to think about. And again, really surprising because a lot of people went into this season like, oh, they don't have a primary forward. Like, oh, pretty much every other team has like, I guess you want to call him like a carry, so to speak, or like somebody who's clearly going to take the brunt of the offensive scoring.
That's always been a trademark of Zam's teams, though. They've always been really defensively minded, and they've always been balanced. They've never had the Dial or something.
Part of the reason for that is because in season 7, when he drafted me, we really focused heavily on goaltending and offense, and ignored the defense almost entirely, and sort of sacrificed that and hoped that, like, so take it back so you can like understand what the roster looked like at the time. It was me and Zam on offense, Doucette and Super on defense a lot. Zam also went back on defense for some games. It was really the defensive pairings were all over the place that season.
Your defense was a combo of Guru, Pet, Super, and Doucette.
Yeah. So, and then we had PK and Net, and so a lot of that was relying on Zam and I to sort of score a bunch of goals and PK to really keep us in games. And that's not to say anything about the defensive players we drafted, just that none of them were ever really considered like bona fide, like solid starting defensemen. And I think that was only the second time Pizza had played defense. It was the second season Guru had played defense, and he didn't even really play that much. Super had never truly been like LHL starting caliber up to that point, and Doucette was a goalie. I mean, Doucette played defense and offense a bit in the RSL, but this was his first time ever playing it at an LHL level. So we were very inexperienced defensively, and that led to a lot of problems for us because we couldn't break out the puck ever. And it was really, really tough for us to get anything going. And I think Zam learned a lot from that season, that he really needed to build the team from the back forwards. And he's done that the past 2 seasons in a row, and his teams have been great so far. So
Yeah.
you got to credit him with that. I mean, he's got Taze both times, and what a hell of a piece to build around. So, and last season he had Mitchell, this season he has Briz, and those, again, 2 of the better goalies in the game, period. So that's a pretty fantastic cornerstone to build off.
Yeah, he's got a lot of he's got the raw talent there in like himself, Taser and Briz, but then he's also got like the kind of the unknown in Jalalu, and Jalalu's like fucking blown his way out. It's been fantastic.
Well, he believes in Jalalu. He's had him now 3 seasons in a row. Jalalu came to Philly, I think, right at the end of season 7 when I got traded away. I think was the time he got traded there. And ever since then, basically, the two have been, Sam and Jalalu have been joined at the hip, and they've been fantastic together on offense so far this season. If you play a lot of pubs, you'll see the two of them. They tear it up in pubs a lot together, too. Zam plays offense a lot in pubs, but sort of been resigned to defense in the LHL just because there's nobody else that could fill that role for them. But Ace has been fantastic for them so far. And any hole that Ace has left has been covered by Briz and Taze anyway, so it's worked out really well, and it's allowed Zam to go back to what he really wants to do, which is be on offense and score points, and he's doing a pretty damn good job of that so far.
Yeah, he's doing fantastic.
So hats off to Zam for creating a really dominant team up to this point.
Yeah, it's been insane how well they've been doing. Well, it's been I'm happy for them though. They're doing really well.
So we'll go to a team that's slightly less dominant. In Pittsburgh, is down there hanging out with us, we're the 1 and 2 squad. All 4 of our teams: Pittsburgh, Quebec, Dallas, and whatever the last team is, Tampa.
Whatever those guys
Words escape me tonight, dude. I'm not here. I'm not with it tonight.
You have a problem, Dial.
I haven't even had a drink yet. Like, that's the problem.
You have a
That's
problem.
really the problem. I haven't had one. I need like
fucking alcoholic.
5
You
or
fuck.
6. Maybe I
All
should
of
just
them.
take some shots. That would help.
Shots.
Anyway, so Pittsburgh has had issues getting Timu to show up, which has definitely been part of the problem for them. But if you look at what their shots per game are, they're at 10 shots per game, which is well above what a typical 5v5 LHL team is capable of producing. So that certainly speaks for itself, which is a bit surprising when you consider that Timu's played 10 minutes of ice time so far this season, and the rest of that's been filled by Mr. U, Goose, and Marchie. And Marchie had 4 goals in his first game. I mean, they've been getting production elsewhere, but sort of after that first game, it kind of fell off a little bit. And the last 2 games, they've got 4 goals combined. And I think 2 of them came from Gabe, 1 of them came from Trevcro, and 1 of them came from Timu. Those are their last 4 goals that have been scored. And you notice the lack of assists on that team as well, meaning a lot of the goals they're scoring are likely off of turnovers or solo effort plays, which is something that is tough to rely on to win games. So I think that, well, again, too early to make any solid conclusions. It's certainly something that's, to use a league meme, a bit of a worrying trend for Pittsburgh. Those who played League of Legends might understand that. If you don't play League, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about. But it is a bit of a worrying trend for Pittsburgh, given that their team play appears to be a little bit off right now. But I'm sure Gabe is going to do a lot to try and fix that and sort of turn things around.
Trades. Can't even spell trades.
I have heard rumors that
Jack Diver?
I've heard rumors that there is just about anybody, or Gabe will consider trading just about anybody on that team right
Except one man.
Except,
we both know who that one man is.
Well, yes, but I've heard many rumblings that not necessarily that any of the players are on the trade block, but just that Gabe is actively receiving offers and will listen to any offer you give him. Doesn't mean he'll accept it, but
all you fellow GMs
if the interest is there, you know, he's willing to make some moves. So we'll see. Although, as a player on that team, that's got to be a little bit concerning to hear, because that sort of shows a little bit of a lack of faith, maybe, in the roster as it stands right now.
That's just a little bit more than a little lack in faith. That's just a lot.
Well, yeah, I'm trying not to be too negative with it here.
I mean, let's call a spade here.
I mean, if we're gonna go all out, man, if we're gonna go all out, clearly, Gabe ruins everything. Gabe's ruined this team. Why did he ever get picked as GM?
Tank the team.
Terrible.
Honestly.
Tank for first overall next season. You can't.
He's gonna start trading away players for first-round picks.
He's gonna pull a Matt, trade away all his players, get 3 first-round picks, and then win the cup anyway.
And then have 3 first-round picks.
What the fuck? Every time I think about it, it's just that's insane. How do you do that?
Easily.
How do you trade away 2 first-round caliber players, which were at the time Notled and Taze, get 2 first-round draft picks out of it, then go on and just win the cup anyway because whatever you can?
I mean, to be as a player on that team who did that, it was pretty fun, to be honest. It was pretty good. It was pretty top cack. I'd do it all again.
Talk about he was actively trying to put himself in a position to fail that season.
He was tanking hard.
He was tanking to amass draft picks and whatnot.
He came to Dolphin and he came to everyone and was like, "This is what's gonna happen. This is what you can do. Do you want off or not?" And I was like, I remember I said to him, "Dude, keep me on the team because I still think we have a chance to do this. Keep Dolphin, keep me. We'll call someone up from the RSL. We can do this. We have a chance." And then we swept Anaheim, and then we beat Toronto.
Now, clearly, a lot of people are going to look at this and say, "Oh, the only reason that was ever able to happen is because the GM was Matt, and nobody else is quite that talented." And I think there's certainly something to be said there. But you gotta tip your hat at least a little bit there. He doesn't get anywhere near as much credit as he should for how well he GM'd that team.
Yeah.
And what he brought that team to, and the fact that in both seasons that he was the GM, he had, I think it was last overall pick is where he was seeded both times, and both seasons he won a cup.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he doesn't get quite as much credit as he probably deserves for being actually a good GM and understanding how to put a team together.
I think he's a fantastic GM.
I think a lot of that gets sort of swept under the rug because people are just "Oh, well, it's just because he's so good and he's so talented." And well, that's certainly part of it. I think you got to consider a little bit more outside of there that a lot of people normally don't think about. And I'm sure most of the people here right now that play this game probably don't even know the seasons we're talking about.
No.
Most of the people,
back in my day,
a good 50% of the people playing here never experienced LHL in 4v4.
I don't want to experience it. I'll guarantee almost all the players who play in the RSL right now do not remember the RSL when it was 3v3.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't.
There was a time when the RSL was a 3v3, and
oh god, what a shit show.
And when LHLers would play actively in the RSL and get points.
Yeah, that was obnoxious. The RSL is in such a better place. Both leagues are in a way better place now than they ever used to be. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get back to it. We'll get back to Pittsburgh here.
Anyway,
we took a tangent there. Oh my god, Dick. We could get Meatel to learn how to play Wonderwall in his recorder. That way you can say that and he can just start playing Wonderwall in his recorder. I can get it on a soundboard and we can play it. That could be the opening to our show. Meatel playing Wonderwall on recorder. Oh my god. Anyway, so yeah, the one person we didn't really mention so far, or who I mentioned a bit earlier, was Proper Cheese, or Princess Vespa as he goes by this season. I don't have saves from him again tonight, but it's going to be another fairly high number as Pittsburgh was getting shots on them left and right, hence why they gave up 6 goals. But he's been incredibly good so far, despite the fact that their defense has been somewhat questionable in front of them. Again, that shots against and that shots against per game is going to go up significantly once we see the save count for Proper there, so don't take it quite for what it is right now. But yeah, he's done an excellent job, and I think he deserves more credit and more attention than he's ever going to get, which is, you know, really to say that like he's done work trying to keep them in games, and unfortunately as a goalie there's only so much you can do. There's only so much you can do to like really truly steal games and really keep yourself in it. But I expect things to get a little bit more cleaned up for them. It'll take a little bit for Gabe and Trevko to get used to playing together or playing together on defense. They played together in Dallas last season, obviously, but Gabe was a forward, so it's a much different relationship to have. So we'll see what happens there. And Gabe's transition to defense is actually something he tried on Atlanta last season before getting traded to Dallas, and didn't work out great on Atlanta. But then again, nothing worked out great on Atlanta those first 7 games. So we'll see if that changes this time around, especially now that he's got somebody like Timu who he trusts to put the puck away. So
yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how that transition to defense works for him, especially if Timu starts showing up, and Mr. U and Timu can get a role in there, and Gabe and Trevko can hold the blue line. That could be, I mean, that could be an effective team. Like that, it could be really, yeah. It's gonna be really interesting to see what happens, especially if they can get Timu coming up and get Gabe actually effective on defense.
I think it's a good idea for Gabe to go back, just because it gives them somebody with a lot of talent who can help break out the puck, and also makes life a bit easier where you can get both Gabe and Timu the puck without them having to like take it away from one another, basically. Like that's sort of been an issue for a lot of teams that have tried to go that route of like doubling up on the heavy offensive carries, is that they both want a lot of touches on the puck, but when you've got 2 of them, they both have to sacrifice, or one really has to sacrifice a lot for the other. And while it is possible to make that work, I think a lot of people, myself included, would sort of expect it to be a bit harder when you've got 2 guys like Timu and Gabe, who are always shoot first, pass second type of guys. And when you get 2 of them together like that, it can be an issue in terms of offensive chemistry. Not that they wouldn't necessarily play well together, but you're going to wind up losing out on chances where they're going to try and force things when they have an easy pass there available. And you see that a little bit in today's game, and you saw it a little bit during the preseason, but it's been kind of tough because Gabe and Timu haven't really played together all that much in the preseason or the regular season. So either way, I think Gabe going back on defense is a good way to manage that. So we will segue on to Quebec, I believe is next.
The Nordiques, yeah, I think they're next, yeah.
The Nordics. So the Nordics are 1-0 with Matt and +4 goal differential, and without Matt they are 0-2.
That's not very good. I'm looking at you, Hartford, and
and they're a -6 goal differential.
Looking at you, Winnipeg. Looking at you.
So bit of a problem. Kind of feels like Winnipeg does, to be honest, or Winnipeg did, where sort of like if you could get everyone to show up, it's a great team. But if you can't get everyone to show up, there's a lot of problems that arise quickly. And I think the last 2 games have been a perfect microcosm for that, where Matt shows up, Matt scores 5 goals, the team is clicking on all cylinders, everybody's playing well, because we talked about it before, and Matt just really elevates the level of play of everyone around him. And you're looking at a 7-3 victory, and then without him, they lost 5-2 and 3-0. So it's like the difference that he makes, not even on the scoreboard, even ignoring that, the difference that his presence there makes in terms of the confidence of everyone on the team, I think is huge. and him having the attendance issues specifically is going to be the biggest problem for them, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on guys like Byrne, Otto, Evcobb, Zod, pretty much everybody else in the roster except for PK, obviously, because he's in net. But it's going to put a lot of pressure on everyone else to have to up their individual play, especially offensively, when Matt isn't there. And so far, they've struggled at doing that. But there's plenty of time for them to sort of develop the chemistry between them.
Yeah, it's only been 3 games. So there's 22 games left in the season.
Yeah.
There's 5 more games we had last season, so it's gonna be interesting. I think
they're gonna have to work at it. I think seeing how they've played without Matt, they tend to look lost, honestly. Where a lot of the times it's like they almost don't know where to go with the puck. And I think if they were to purposely practice and scrim without Matt and get used to not having him, they'd see a lot more success.
Yeah,
but it's gonna take work, and I mean that's sort of something that like Jabba as a GM needed to understand going into the draft and coming out of it after taking Matt. I think he needed to understand that this is how it's going to be, and that you need to have a team that's capable of winning without Matt if you want to make it to the playoffs and win a cup. And they're certainly capable of it, but I don't think they've put in enough practice together without him yet to really understand how to play without him. So it's going to take work, and a lot of that's on Jabba to really sit the team down and say, we're doing this, we're practicing this is how it's going to be. And him being a rookie GM, we don't really know what to expect from him. We don't know how much oversight he's going to have.
No.
So,
he could easily be one of the GMs who's like, you do this, and or he could be one of the GMs who reverses to, or sorry, reverts to the veterans advice, hey Matt, what can I do with this, or hey so and so, what should I do with this, or something.
I mean, I think it's a good idea because you got a lot of people like PK on there, especially. I'll highlight him, has been one of the best GMs the league has ever had, and again, he sort of doesn't get anywhere near as much credit as he deserves in terms of GM-ship because he's taken over 2 teams now where the GM retired early on in the season, and in both cases he did a massive turnaround on the team. The first case was Season 2 New Jersey, where they were doing horribly. They had won 1 game or something like that. PK comes in and they're a playoff team. They made the playoffs. And in the case of last season, they were only 2 games out after starting 0-7 on the season. They made an incredible turnaround, and like we said earlier, had the 2nd and 3rd best record in the league after the trade deadline and after the first 7 games, respectively. So I think he deserves a lot of credit, and he should be a major point of reference for Java because he understands how to build a team. He understands how to get the most out of a team, how to get the most out of players, and I think he specifically is going to be key to their success without Matt, because he's going to be one of those people that will be able to understand fully what's going on when Matt isn't there and how they can best account for that. Yeah. And you've got other ex-GMs on there too.
Oh, hell yeah.
Like, Tickle has been a GM. Byrne obviously was a GM the last 2 seasons. Evcobb was a GM briefly. So you've got that veteran leadership pretty much across the board. They really don't have any what you would sort of call prospect players. I would really only count Zod as that, but every player on their team has been around since Season 2 of the LHL at the latest, which is pretty crazy to think about. I think they're probably the only team with that much experience. So that should bode well for them. They just have to learn how to use it.
Yeah, they just have to click. That's the problem.
That's going to take time. So
yeah, I think they can do it though. I can definitely see them doing it.
Yeah, they'll definitely contend for a playoff spot. I don't think there's really that much concern with it. Like PK especially is fantastic. So, and I know he's PK's chasing a cup this season because he has yet to win one. In the first 8 seasons, he has yet to win a single cup, and I think he's made it to the finals maybe once. I think once, and he lost it. So I know he's really hungry for it, so I'd expect to see him want to be really active and trying to get that team up and get that team together.
My only problem looking at this team is I'm just reminiscing of teams that have taken Matt in the past and what's happened to them. And then Matt does it, like Matt doesn't have consistent attendance, and it doesn't. The lineups don't work, and
Yep.
everything does not work together. But they have this team has the potential to do it.
Matt's 5v5 track record is really not good.
No.
Season 6, he was drafted by Hartford, a team that didn't make the playoffs, and was last place by far. Got traded to New York, who barely made the playoffs by 1 point, and then went on to lose in 6 games anyway in the first round. Season 7, I don't think Matt played Season 7. Yeah, Matt did not play Season 7.
No.
Then Season 8, he came in, got drafted to Winnipeg, who had a really bad start as well. Matt wasn't showing up. Matt finally got traded to Chicago, who did make the playoffs, but again is the 4th seed. So, not that they barely made it in, but there was certainly concern for them throughout the season that they might not, and then wound up getting swept in the first round. So, Matt has not enjoyed the same level of success in terms of wins and losses as he has on the stat sheet. Even though he's been tearing it up with goals and assists and whatnot, just like he did in 4v4, he's yet to find that same level of success in terms of the wins, and that's really been a big detriment to his 5v5 career so far. And again, a lot of people attribute that to his inconsistency in attendance. And we talked about it before with Chicago last season, where him never being there and Sammy missing so much time, when they came back for the playoffs, it was like an entirely new team that had never played together.
Yeah, it was and that's one of the main things we keyed off of in that playoff series. We tried to, like, we went off of the fact that this team hadn't played together very much, and that and that's what we were going off of.
And it was ultimately the biggest downfall for them because they just could not get things going. They were off on their passing. They were off on sort of like understanding where their teammates were going to be. So defensively, they were missing assignments. Just a lot of snowball effects that result from that a lot of people normally don't think about immediately. But consistency in your lineup is honestly like a big deal, and is something that like contributes to how well you play together in the long run, especially. And that's why you see teams sometimes that start off poorly but end up really well, just because they finally figured it out. It just took them a little while. So it's an underrated aspect of the game that I think a lot of people tend to just ignore, but it really does make a big difference. I mean, we've joking. I don't even know how to say that. We've joked about it, I guess is the way to say it. Joked about it in the past, like the whole like, oh, chem, like I have chem with this player. But there really is such a thing as like team chemistry and sort of understanding what to expect from your teammates. And when that doesn't develop, it doesn't matter how good you were in the regular season based on your record. If you don't have any chemistry amongst your team and understanding of how each other's going to play, you're going to eat shit in the playoffs, for lack of a better term. So anyway, we'll get to Tampa, last team. So no interviews tonight. A little bit disappointing.
Is Dolphin dead, or is can we not get him on?
I don't know. Well, you know, we can't have a Dallas Circle joke, so.
Well, not yet. Come on.
Nope.
All right.
But yeah, that's definitely a good portion of my fault. This was sort of like a last minute thing, not necessarily last minute, but we didn't really go out and actively like try to find a guest host or anything like that for the show. So we will again in the future. We'll sort of get back to that. We'll get back to some player interviews and stuff like that. But I was kind of curious, especially with this show, to see what we could get for timing if we cut out that last section and cut out the player interviews and cut out the guest host and everything, and see where we're at in terms of length of the show. Because I know a lot of people had trouble staying and following along with it the whole way through, so understandably. But anyway, so Tampa, slow start, to say the least. They were the only team that didn't get a point in the first 2 games. We touched on that a little bit in the schedule. Before tonight, Jerry was leading the team with 3 points, as with Crab. The 2 of them had 3 points each, and Cap had 2 points, and Claude had 2 points. And tonight, neither Crab or Jerry got any points, but Claude had a Hattie, and Cap got all 3 assists. So certainly a good way to get things going for them, which is important. because this team is pretty much, in my mind, going to live and die off of how well Cap and Claude are able to play together.
You think so?
Yeah, I really do think that that's really the X factor for this team, and I think that really presented itself during the regular season in the first 2 games here, where we saw the two of them just were not on the same page at all, and they combined for, I think, only 1 goal between them. I think it was they combined for. I gotta double check that, but
What are you talking? What's happening?
with Cap and Claude, pretty sure they only
Tonight?
combined. No, before tonight. Pretty sure they only combined for 1 goal and obviously 1 assist before tonight. So there was a bit of a disconnect there, and I think if they don't have the ability to play well together, that team's going to fall apart. Because K-Bomb is great, but any goalie is going to start to crack if you really can't get pucks in the net on the other end of the ice.
Mm-hmm.
So, but tonight they started to turn it back around, and you hope to see some consistency in that. Kind of feel a little bit bad for Crab getting relegated to defense again. I think he succeeds a lot more on offense, and that's a role much better suited to his game style. But he's been pretty good at being back there and breaking out the puck and getting it to them. And defenseman Jerry's got a wicked shot. Bring out my inner Bostonian in there. But he's got an incredibly nice shot, and that's provided them with 2 goals so far in the season. So Cap yet to score. Interesting, just noticing this. Cap 5 assists, no goals. Claude 5 goals, no assists. Funny how that works. Yeah.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with you about the fact that that's gonna live and die. The defense, I mean, sure the defense could be better, but I think Crab and I think Crab and Dima and Jared Gurms can play nice defense. I think it's a well-rounded team. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens. I don't necessarily agree with you so much as that if Crab and Claude aren't scoring, then the entire team is dead. I think they can hang in games.
I think a lot of it's going to fall on them. Like I think Crab and Jerry are very good supplemental players. And honestly, I think Cap sort of falls in that role as well. And that's nothing negative about anyone. Like, just saying you're a supplemental player does not mean that like you're bad in any sort at all. So let me just get that out of the way here. I mean, we've probably spoken about this before, but just because you're not an offensive carry does not mean you're bad, or does not mean you're any lower down than somebody who might be considered an offensive carry. But I think they're going to have some issues if Claude isn't hot and able to score. I think they're going to have some issues, and I'm just attempting to be sort of fair with it. You look at guys like Jerry, Crab, and Cap, and Jerry's LHL career isn't really long enough to make any conclusions, but both Cap and Crab have been like heavily assist-oriented players. They're 2 of the only players that have more assists than goals in their career, and it's a significant difference. It's not like close. They're like heavily more assists than goals. So I think that says a lot right there about the type of players they are. And so while they'll be able to set each other up fantastically, I'm sure, I don't know if they can pick up the slack so much if Claude's not having a great game. And that worries me a little bit, because it sort of reminds me of like a season 7 Philly, like we spoke about earlier, like a team where you're going to score 2 or 3 goals, but you're going to give up 3 or 4 and lose by 1 consistently. And I'm a little bit worried, based on how their first 2 games have gone, that might become a trend for them. But again, we spoke about it, a lot, and that whole team chemistry and developing and learning how to play with one another probably really hasn't come into play yet. And I don't think Claude and Cap have ever played together on offense before, so there's going to be a lot of growing pains there to get through. And I still expect them to be competing for a playoff spot as we go through the season. So.
Yeah, I can see them being the 4th or 5th team in the standings.
Getting a win tonight, I think, was really big for them, because I think if they had gone down 0-3 to start the season, I think you'd start to see some thoughts of doubt creeping into the back of their minds, where it's like, are we really as good as we think we might be? So definitely really good to see them get a win tonight, just from the perspective of keeping themselves in it, because that was a huge problem for Atlanta, where they lost like 3 games in a row, and it just all fell apart. it just all crumbled, and they sort of just gave up and got down on themselves mentally and went on to lose another 4 games before they were able to like right the ship and get through it, figure it out, get over the whole emotional aspect, and just play. So again, nice to see them get a win there, and hopefully they'll avoid tumbling down that way. Certainly trending in the right direction. So
Yeah.
So that's
the quote, to make your league reference, it's a good trend.
it's not a worrying trend. It is not a worrying trend. You're right. I want to explain that reference for everyone who doesn't get it, but it would be such a long explanation that it's just like it's not worth it. It's so not worth it. So alright, so this brings us to the last section, which is going to be looking ahead to next week. If I could pull this up. Hey, it works. Alright, so we'll do the prediction reveal live like we've done before.
Shouldn't we go into who won the most predictions for last season?
We went over that in the most recent show, or
Did we?
the second to last show
who won that again,
or
yeah?
whatever. You won by 1 game. By 1 game.
I won?
One game.
I won.
1
By the way,
game.
by the way, check your Snapchat, by the way.
You won by 1 game.
So I won. Go Dick Dog. Woo.
Yeah, we'll see about that this season.
All I'm saying
We'll see
is-
about that.
You gotta check your Snapchat.
I am opening it right now. See, this stuff is why people don't think we talk about anything. Oh, that's a lovely cat cam. We gotta get your cat as our guest host next show. Just have a live feed of your cat right there in the middle where the normal guest host is.
We can do that. Oh, now she's leaving.
Oh my god.
Someone wrestled something downstairs, and now she's going downstairs. So rest in peace, cat cam. We hardly knew thee.
So, bit of a tough time with predictions this week, just because again, only 3 games played, and most of these matchups haven't even happened yet. The Tuesday games are going to be a repeat of the season opener, so, but they're going to be a lot different, I think, than before, and we'll get there. So we'll start with Sunday, which the first game is going to be Chicago and Quebec. So I think this is one of those games that hinges entirely on whether or not Matt shows up. I think it's still too early for Quebec to really have things figured out, and I think Chicago will be riding the confidence of getting the overtime win. And I'm sort of assuming that Matt's not going to be there, and given that fact, I'm going to go Chicago with this game. But if Matt shows up, I think Quebec takes it.
I'm gonna say Quebec takes this game. I think Matt's gonna show up, and I think Matt's gonna put up a nice performance again tonight.
Another 5 points. Another 5 goals.
Maybe 8 points.
Maybe 8. That would be a little bit ridiculous, don't you think?
Maybe not 8 exactly, but I think Matt shows up Sunday. I think Quebec takes that game.
Okay. All right. Fair. I mean, if he does show up, I would agree with you. So, if he doesn't show up, I don't quite have faith yet, because they haven't shown me enough yet without Matt to really convince me that they can beat a team that has the level of talent of Chicago. And again, Chicago's riding a win streak right now. They've won their past 2 games after going down in a pretty weak showing to Philly. So I believe that they're going to keep riding that confidence and keep it going. And honestly, even if Matt's there, I'm sure Chicago's going to put up a fight. So they've got the ability to score. We'll skip over the Dallas and Philly because we don't have a guest that could predict that.
Can I impersonate Dal fans' voice and do this one or no?
Well, he wouldn't be able to predict it either because he's also on Dallas.
Can we just pull someone in from another channel and be like, "What do you want about this?"
No, because I don't want to give them credit for this prediction.
All right.
Okay, so last game on Sunday will be Pittsburgh and Tampa. So those are 2 teams that have had a rougher start to the season than some of the other ones. Tampa on a bit of an uptrend. I would say Pittsburgh on a bit of a downtrend. They've lost their last 2, whereas Tampa just broke a losing streak. I think Tampa's going to win this. I think they're going to continue to ride, just like Chicago is, ride that that
Buddy joins the
motivation that they
channel.
got from that win.
What's
So,
up, Hippo?
yo, we're joined
guys,
by the Rising Hippo.
Oh, yeah, sweet
We're on.
podcast.
We're
Yep.
on the podcast right now. Welcome to the Foreskin.
Well, I hate to say that I was working tonight and didn't get to see it, but I'm not sure who did play-by-play, but I fully expect to be there next Thursday. So,
Yeah,
I
I
think it was
think
Master Metroid who did it.
Was it Metroid? I couldn't
it was Master
remember who it
Metroid.
was. Okay.
Sorry, Master Meteorite. Excuse me, I mispronounced. his name.
Meteoroid?
no,
Is it
Meteoroid.
Meteoroid or?
It's
Master
definitely
Meteoroid.
Metroid.
No, it's Master Meteorite. He told me it's Master Meteorite.
Honestly, I read it as Metroid all the time too.
It's
It is
Not
Meteorite.
gonna lie.
Metroid. It is
Yeah.
Metroid.
But
It is definitely Metroid.
he told Dick Dug it's Meteoroid? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He lied to Dick Dug.
No, it's Master Meteorite. That's how you pronounce
Hippo.
his name.
Hippo, you want to make some totally unbiased and like over the top predictions for the LHL?
Yeah, give me a second to remember who's on what teams. I just don't, since I'm not good enough to be in the LHL, I just kind of,
No, you're fucking terrible, kid. Get out of here.
come on, dude.
You're good. Hold on. Give me a soundboard. Give me a nice Anal Tuesday before we start this stuff.
Oh my god. We're
Yeah,
not
no,
doing
no,
we're not
no.
doing
We're not doing
soundboards.
it. We're not doing it.
Oh
We're not
my
doing it.
god. Get off my
Alright.
podcast.
It's not your podcast.
It is.
It's
it
our
might-
podcast.
no,
You don't get
it's
to
the
make
name,
these
isn't it?
decisions.
It's the Dick Dial pile.
It's
Dick.
the
Dick is the
Faceoff.
first name. Yeah,
It's
Dick-
the
yeah.
face off.
No, it's the
Okay.
it's the Dick Dial
Hippo,
pile.
are you pulling up like the rosters right now? Is
Yeah,
that what
yeah,
you're
yeah.
doing?
Hang on. Give me 2 seconds here.
We'll have him go through all 3 games. While he's doing that, Pittsburgh or Tampa, Dick Dug?
Huh?
Pittsburgh or Tampa?
Tampa.
Do you have a reason for that, or you just like them better?
Let me pull up the rosters. Tampa Bay.
Oh my god. We were just talking about them.
Okay, so alright, Tampa Bay. I'm gonna assume. I just don't think Pittsburgh can click well enough, and I think Claude's gonna be riding the high that was this past night, and I think Claude and Cap are gonna play well. I think Avon can play. Cheese, no offense to Cheese, we're decent buds, but yeah. And I think the Cap, Crab, Dima, and Jerry defense combo can beat, or can at least contend, or at least can play with
I think
the.
I think
Gabe and
K-Bomb
Shevgro.
I think K-Bomb steals it.
Yeah.
I think K-Bomb wins that game for them. I think it's going to be a closer game than they'd probably like, but I think K-Bomb is ultimately going to be the deciding factor in that game. I think they're going to win 3-2. That's my official prediction. You can quote me on that. All right, Hippo, you all set?
Yeah, man.
Okay. Chicago and Quebec. Who wins?
I hate to say it, but I saw this coming. Quebec seems to be a dumpster fire early in the season.
Damn.
When you see names like Matt and KS Auto, and you know that there's going to be some attendance issues, this team could be really, really good with Jabba at D and Matt scoring goals at will like we know he can. But he's not going to show up, and first couple games. Let me see how games played. I don't know if he's been there.
They lost 5-2 in the first game. Matt wasn't there. They won 7-3 in the second game. Matt was there, scored 5 goals, and then they lost 3-0 tonight. Matt was not there.
Yeah. See, so he's 1 for 3, and of course he scores 5 goals and they blow somebody out. But
Yeah, somebody.
Some bums. Who they face again?
Wasn't us.
was
it not us.
Dallas?
It was definitely not us.
I think it was. I think it was Pittsburgh. I think it was Pittsburgh.
Yeah, let's throw them under the bus. Totally them. Don't look at the stat or the score
I
sheet.
think I just think that speaks to my point. The team could be very good, and they've got some depth. Zod like controls the daggum RSL, but when your best player's not gonna show up, or have a 1/3 show up percentage, it's not gonna go well for you. I hate to pick Chicago. I hate to, but I'm gonna have to. I think Chicago wins the game. The pick, like it's almost like you might as well have 2 picks. If Matt shows up, I'm picking Quebec.
Yeah.
But on the 1/3 chance that he shows up thus far, I've got to pick Chicago.
Yeah.
I'll take Chicago in a low-scoring game, like 3-1, 2-1.
Interesting.
Low scoring game, 3-1.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Philly and Dallas. Hippo.
Speaking of dumpster fires, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, you know,
I mean, we have the worst goals against, like, per game in the league so far. So I wouldn't necessarily say we're a dumpster fire
no,
yet.
I'm kidding. I'm obviously kidding.
We're not great right now.
You know, I participated in a bunch of the mock drafts for the LHL. I feel like, you know, I'm around enough, and, you know, I kind of dived in when I started hanging out in the community. I know a lot of the LHL players well enough that I think I did pretty well, and I picked for Quebec in the first spot and drafted a team very similar to Dallas. And I think Quebec had a chance to do something like that, you know, with Jabba at GM. He had a chance to put a stacked team together. And I think Dalfan, you know, it's not really coming through right now. But like you said, you guys have had the most goals against. So it's still very early in the season. But you could put an all-star squad together. I think Jabba missed out on putting an all-star squad together. And, you know, he trades and gets a few better picks in the later rounds, but I think Dalfin had a big steal. Not that you're that good, Dal. Don't get your head get that big, but
Damn.
But no, but for real, I think that Quebec with the #1 overall pick could have gotten a stacked team, and he simply traded it away. That being said, Philly is off to a hot start, just like they did last season. They've got a few of the same players, I believe. On Philadelphia there. Zam seems to do a very good job picking a strong team that usually competes well into the playoffs. But with he and Taze on D, that's a pretty strong defense. But you know, like, to look at the other side, you got Dial scoring goals on the offensive end, and Dick Dug on D in the defensive end, and Dalfin in goal, or Meat Sale in goal. It's a tough pick. I think I have to go with Philly in a close one, simply because they're on a roll right now, and I don't know if you guys have found your stride yet.
Okay, I respect that. I mean, after the way we played the last two games, I mean, I think that's a pretty fair pick, especially how they played. We started off pretty well in our very first game, but since then have had a lot of issues, and I don't think we're quite as bad maybe as those scores looked, or especially that 7-3 game indicated. But I do think that Philly definitely is favored in that game. I think they have the edge in that game for sure.
Was it Matt? What is it against Matt? Is that what were you joking?
Yeah, I wasn't. It was against Matt. He scored 5 goals against us and shredded us.
And so yeah, I think that does skew your stats a little bit. It's like, you know, how I think everybody, especially those that listen to this podcast, know how Matt is. Like, it's just like, if he turns it on, it's, you know, it's not stoppable at this point. There's nobody that can stop him when he's on.
We drew the short stick of being the one game he played this week, and then of course Matt, Matt does Matt things, and we made a lot of mistakes. So we were in that game 3-3 at the end of the second period, and it just all went to shit towards the end. We went down 5-3, and then we sort of tried to make desperation plays from the defensive zone to try and get things going, and that resulted in bad turnovers and 7-3, and there you have it. And now we look like we suck. So there's that.
It's still real early in the season.
Yeah,
you know, it's gonna change.
No, I mean, I
undefeated well into the first couple weeks.
I would pick Philly as well. If I had to make a prediction on this, I would pick Philly as well, and I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with me picking against my own team, but just trying to be realistic with it.
Jay Lalu is leading the league in points by far, like almost doubles your points. And I guess did he have a big game or something that's kind of inflating those stats a little bit?
He's had 6 points in the first game, 4 in the second game, 4 in the third.
So pretty consistently high scoring. Yeah. I mean, he's on a roll. So I you know, sometimes I think it's a game of momentum. Sometimes they're on and sometimes they're not. And Jay Lalu's on right now. So if he keeps scoring like he does, it's going to be tough for you guys to stop him, for Dallas to stop him.
Yeah. Well, I hope we can keep it close. That's really the big thing. I want to see improvement right now. So doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a win, just improvement. Anyway, okay. Last game of Sunday is Pittsburgh and Tampa. Can we get a prediction from Hippo on that?
You know, we said completely unbiased, so I'm gonna try to be completely unbiased here. Just looking through these rosters. Let's see. Timu's one of those that I don't know hardly anything about. So it's hard to judge.
Just know that he's bad.
Called out, dude.
Very much like Gabe. Very similar style to Gabe. Gabe is actually playing defense on that team. Something a bit surprising you might not notice originally. It's Gabe and Trev Crow on defense, Timu and like Mr. U, Goose, Marchie on offense, and then Proper Cheese in that.
Yeah, surprisingly, Marchie being so close to Lucic and everything, Marchie ran the lower league last season, and
Yep.
I have been surprised that it has not translated more into the LHL. I mean, I know that the level of play is much higher, obviously, but I have been surprised that he hasn't shown out a little more. I mean, he has 4 points. That's respectable for a backup, offensive.
He got 4 goals in the very first game of the season. He played offense. He was effectively their star forward, and yeah, he got 4 goals that very first game, which was incredible. He had a really good performance.
Yeah, so I think this may be a big season for him. Like I said, I was really surprised that it didn't translate last season. That he didn't, show. In the RSL, a lot of us were, and myself included, not too butthurt, but I mean, a lot of people were upset that Marchie was in the RSL at all because he is such a good player. But I think it ended up being great because, like I said, Marchie didn't. I expected him to go up in the LHL and be one of the top players, and he simply wasn't. He was a good, depth player. So I'm surprised that Gabe hasn't stepped up to offense. You never know what's going on in a locker room with Gabe and being a GM. So who knows? But I'm surprised that he hasn't stepped up and played some offense to try to get that team going. They're low on goals. I think they've scored 9, and Marchie had 4 of those in the opener.
Yep.
So they're not a big goal scoring team right now. It might be time to shuffle that up. Looking at Tampa Bay, they're in the same boat, kind of struggling. So that's going to be a tough matchup. I think probably a low scoring matchup, unless Marchie or someone like Claude or Cap can get it going. This one's kind of a toss up for me. I don't think I'd take the money. I don't think I'd take the line on either of them. It's kind of a pick 'em. So I think, but I probably will go Tampa Bay, just because I think K-Bomb, matching the teams up, position to position, they're pretty even in talent. But at the G, I think there's a big difference in the goal spot. K-Bomb's obviously one of the best goalies in the league, so I think I'm gonna go Tampa Bay by, let's say, low scoring, 2-1.
That's actually pretty close to what I said. I said K-Bomb. Princess Vespa is Proper Cheese, and I said earlier in the show before you were here, I do think he's underrated as a player, and I do think he's done well so far, despite how their team appearance might look. But K-Bomb is an excellent goalie. Just got a shutout tonight. I expect him to sort of ride that, keep it going, and win them that game. And I said 3-2. So,
yeah, I don't know if the stats are. I didn't look at these. I don't know if the top performer stats are updated from tonight.
No, they're not from tonight. So
I mean, I say that there's a big difference, but you're right. Proper Cheese Princess Vespa is ranked number 1 in save percentage.
Yep.
So for shots on goal and stuff like that, he's obviously having a good year. But from what I just like, K-Bomb's one of those that when you watch him, you're not like, how the hell does he make some of those saves? And so I regard him as one of the best in the league.
Which is entirely fair, I think. All right, so keeping on the Pittsburgh train, on Tuesday we're opening with Quebec and Pittsburgh. Now these two played each other in one of the first games of the season on Sunday of this past week. There was no Timu there, there was no Matt there, and Pittsburgh won 5-2 in that game. And that was the game Marchie scored 4 goals in. So, Dick, can I get a prediction on this rematch?
I'm gonna go with you guys and say if Matt's there, it's gonna be. If Matt and Timu show up, I think it's gonna be a really offensive game. I think it's gonna maybe like a 6 or 7 goal game for one of these teams. If Matt's not there and Timu is there, it's Pittsburgh. If Timu's there and Matt's not there, I still think Pittsburgh wins. I'm gonna take Pittsburgh in this.
Okay, I'm going to go opposite of you. I think Matt will show up to one game this week, and I think it's going to be the one against Pittsburgh here. I think Matt shows up. I think he dominates the game. I think Timu will show up as well, and I think he and Gabe are going to contribute a lot more offensively than they have so far. So I'd expect to see them put at least a lot of shots on goal. It really would come down to PK in terms of how much they're able to score, but I expect it to be a competitive game, but I think Matt's going to show up. I think he's going to really lead that Quebec team in the right direction, and I think this will be the point where Quebec starts to sort of find their feet a little bit, find some consistency. Hippo. Quebec, Pittsburgh.
I think once again, I think most of the Quebec picks doesn't really matter who they're playing. The analysis is kind of the same. It depends on attendance, and just like you guys said, if Matt's there and gets on a roll, nobody's gonna stop him. You got to score with him. And I don't think Pittsburgh can do that on Jabba and Evcobb in the defensive zone. So I'm gonna go Quebec and Matt showing up for one of his games.
All right, so that brings us to Chicago and Philly, the Sci-Fi matchup. And they also played on opening day, and this was the game that Chicago lost 7-2. So huge deficit that game. Jay Lalu was 5 goals, 1 assist that game. Pretty insane performance from him. Meanwhile, Lucic, Tall, and Leafs combined for 3 points that night. So huge difference in terms of those teams that first game. I personally don't think it's going to be as big of a difference this time, and I think we'll start to see Jay Lalu and Zam's production level off a little bit, and I think you're going to continue to see a spike in the production of the Chicago players, so I'm going to go with Chicago this game. I think this is the game that Philly's win streak comes to an end, and they start to get brought back down a little bit closer to the rest of the 5 teams. So yeah, I'm picking Chicago this time. I think it's a good matchup for them. The one thing I guess I'd be concerned about would be scoring on Briz versus scoring on Nina. Briz is an excellent goalie, and Nina is definitely an LHL caliber goalie, but I wouldn't say on the same level at all with someone like Briz. So it's definitely going to be a tight one there, but Nina's been playing very well recently the last 2 games, and I think that's a good sign for them. That's a good sign for him and his confidence, and I think the more confident he is, the better he's going to play. And that would be a great statement game for Chicago if they could go out and win that game against a team that is likely undefeated up to that point. Hopefully not undefeated. I mean, hopefully we'll end it, right? Hopefully we'll end it on Sunday. I think we have a chance, but still, it's a tough game. But I think Chicago is going to be the team that finally knocks him down a peg. Dick, I'll toss it over to you.
I'm gonna have to go with Chicago here too. I think after we beat Philadelphia on Sunday, I think Chicago's offense takes over here. I think Jalal and Zam's production also ends off. I think Taser starts to come back a bit more. I think Taser kind of takes control in this game, but I just think offense is too much for the offense of the Chicago team is too much for this Philadelphia team to handle, and it's not gonna necessarily be a runaway, but I don't think Philadelphia's is gonna be able to skate with them offensively and be able to win the game.
Okay. Hippo?
Not so fast, my friends. Philly rolls through Dallas on Sunday and keeps it going against Chicago, I think Taze and Zam stop Gabe's and Timu's offensive threat. It's just they're playing strong right now. I think if they get through Dallas with the momentum, I think that Chicago could even get ugly.
So you think we could see a repeat of the 7-2 performance they put up last time?
We're not too far removed from that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if they keep playing like they have been playing, Jay Lulu's playing out of his mind. I've seen him in a few pub games as well. Just he's got it going for him right now. And if he keeps that up, it could get ugly. But I'm picking Philly. Maybe not that ugly, but I'll take them. I'll take 2 goals if they're 2-goal favorites. I'm taking that bet.
Okay. And that brings us to the last game of Tuesday, which is something only you are going to be able to judge on, which is Dallas and Tampa Bay. So, Hippo, I'll give you some context here. Dallas won the last matchup 5-2 to start the season.
Yeah, I think Dallas wins that one pretty easily. If they come out and play like they're capable of, I don't think they'll have trouble, too much trouble. Just Tampa Bay probably needs to find some gel going in to the meat of the season here and start performing. They've got a lot of good players on their team. Got to put it together. But if Dallas comes out and plays like they're capable, I think they have the edge. I'd take them in a close game, probably a goal.
Okay. So Thursday, this will be the last day of predictions for us. We're going back to Quebec again. Quebec and Philly. Hippo, you want to start?
Sure. I'm on the Philly train tonight. It depends on Matt. We've said this already 3 times. If Matt shows up, I think Zam and Taser do have trouble with Matt. If Matt does not show up, I think Zam and Taser probably don't let much get towards Briz without Matt there. So, I think it depends on Matt. But if we're going to say that he's going to show up on Tuesday, it means he's probably not going to show up on Thursday because he's got a 1 in 3. He's got a 33% chance if all things are the same as this week. So I'm going to take Philly. Is it possible that they go,
6-0 again?
Yeah, 6-0 again.
This will be the second season in a row they go 6-0 if they win all 3 games this week.
And
yeah.
We don't retain players like you guys used to, but there are a few of the same players on this Philly team.
Yeah, Taze and Jay Lalu and Zam all back again, and you could make an argument they upgraded from Meatsail to Briz. I mean, obviously not like a gigantic upgrade or anything, both stellar players, but definitely after the performance Briz put on in the playoffs, like it's an upgrade there for sure.
I think they have some good depth too. So Ace is a solid defenseman, and Wateki, even with his high ping, is a threat on offense. And depending on Dildo showing up, I think
Dildo had a Hattie. He had a Hattie in his first game with them.
Yeah. We missed Dildo last season. I think he's a very good contributor to the community. Last season, I think that the LHL missed him. So hopefully he, his attendance is solid this season, and he contributes. I think that Philly squad is going to be one of the tougher squads to beat this season.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think I'm going to go with Philly as well, although I'm going to say that even if Matt makes it, Philly wins this game.
Wow.
I think no matter what, Philly is incredibly hot right now. Even if they lose one or both games on Sunday and Tuesday, I think they still come in with enough talent and enough consistency to be able to win that game with or without Matt. We've seen that Taze and Briz especially, each individually, have been 2 of the best players in the game at shutting down Matt. 2 of the people that have been most effective against him, especially Briz. Briz held Matt to only 2 points per game in the playoffs last season, which is incredible, given that he averages over 4 most of the time. So especially when you get to the playoffs where he really turns it up. So I would expect that Briz and Taze are really going to go hard that game, and I think it's a good matchup for them. Where I think Quebec is still a little bit shaky defensively with their D pairing. I don't think they're quite comfortable together yet, and I think Jay Lalu and Zam and whoever else is playing Dildo at that point maybe are going to be able to take advantage of that. And I think you're going to see a very close game. I'm going to say a 1-goal game, but I think Philly ends up winning that 4-3. Dick Doug?
Like anyone. You know what? I'm gonna buck the trend. I'm not gonna go on the Philly hype train. I'm gonna say Quebec wins that game. I'm gonna say Matt shows up. Briz, it's a metaphorical sieve in that game. The defense can't stop him. Matt's creating plays all over the place. It's not gonna be a runaway. It's not gonna be a stomp, but it's also not gonna be a logo. But it's also not gonna be a 1-goal game. It's gonna be Matt's gonna have another 5. He's gonna have another multi-point night, and he's gonna he's gonna bring the Quebec Nordiques back up, and the Quebec Nordiques take that game. They're gonna win.
Okay, bold statement there. All right, we'll keep it on you, Dick Doug, then for your last prediction of the night. Chicago and Tampa Bay.
Chicago and Tampa Bay. This is an iffy one in my opinion because both teams have the ability to be better than they have been. But this past week, the best one in my opinion has been Tampa Bay, especially with their performance this past night. Claude and Kapanen clicked really well, but on the same token, you can't deny the offensive power that the Chicago Black Sox have in Tall Midget, Krejci, and Leafs. So with that being said, I'm gonna continue rambling here for a bit. The only weakness I have to say on Chicago is their goaltending, because K-Bomb, no offense to Nina's a good goaltender. K-Bomb is a better goaltender, and I think it's going to come down to how good the defense is, and I think the defense is going to be a bit more offensive and a bit more experienced on Chicago. So I think Chicago takes this game.
Okay.
Thanks for your
Yeah, I almost put it on myself there. I was like, wait a second, no, Dick Doug. Anyway, yeah, it sounded like you were going with Tampa there early on for your prediction, and I was going to disagree with you. I was going to go with Chicago like you ultimately ended up doing, and my reasoning for that is that I think it's a really good matchup for Chicago. I think guys like Lucic, who are really good at deking and dangling, and like Leafs and Tall are fairly good at that too, although not quite as well known for it. I think their ability to create solo plays are going to be really effective against guys like Crab, who don't necessarily, and Jerry as well, who don't necessarily excel in the one-on-one breakups. Like, not to say they're bad defensemen by any means, but they excel in other areas, usually offensively and in terms of breaking out the puck. And they're perfectly fine when you've got them playing team defense together. But I think Chicago is a team that is going to be really good at creating one-on-one scenarios, and that's something we saw tonight. That was how they won their game tonight, was by creating a lot of one-on-one situations or one-on-0 situations and taking advantage of all of those. And they have the talent to be able to do that, and I think that's going to be ultimately what breaks Tampa in this game. Is they're going to get a bunch of one-on-one situations where Lucic or Leafs or Tall are able to get around the one guy they're playing against, and they're going to be able to take advantage of those weaknesses in the Tampa defense, and I think they'll be able to pull a win off of that. They'll get enough shots on net that it won't matter how well K-Bomb is playing. Eventually, he's going to break. Hippo?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think I'm going to agree with you guys. I do think that Leafs is gonna have to show up heavily in this game, and I don't mean attendance. I think he needs to be very influential. I think that the Tampa Bay defense will be focusing on stopping Lucic and Tall Midget. Leafs has to be very, very have a strong input on the game for it to go Chicago's way, but I think he will. I think he steps up and scores a few goals, and pushes Chicago past Tampa Bay.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting matchup. Unless, like, if Matt shows up on Thursday for their game, I think the Philly Quebec game might be the closest and most exciting one. If he doesn't, I feel like there's a lot of potential there for that Chicago Tampa Bay one to be really good, especially depending on how Tampa's week goes. If they find a way to get to keep this win streak going and come into that game with 3 wins under their belt in a row, I think they could be really hot and pose a big problem to Chicago. And if K-Bomb really turns it up and shuts it down in net, you're going to see, I think, Chicago start to break down mentally. And that's something that team is going to have to be careful of, is making sure that they're not getting tilted by getting shut down over and over again by Briz. Not by Briz, sorry, by K-Bomb. So I think it's definitely something to worry about, and should be an exciting game no matter what. So last prediction, Hippo. The last game of week 2 will be Pittsburgh and Dallas.
I think this is gonna be a tough one, and I think it will depend on I think it will be heavily influenced by how Sunday and Tuesday go. I think Dallas is on a little downspin, as we've kind of talked about already. Struggled in the last 2 games, but I think if they get it back together early in the week, then this Thursday game could be not very competitive. I think that Pittsburgh will struggle to stop Dallas's offense if they get it back together. Now, if Dallas doesn't do very well early in the week, or even splits it, and it's don't get some momentum flowing, then I think Pittsburgh could sneak up on Dallas and pull the little upset. I think that Dallas has the talent built on the scales, but I'm gonna go with the upset and Pittsburgh getting it together and beating Dallas. I think it could. Like I said, it will depend on how well Sunday and Tuesday go for Dallas. Those are 2 big games. If they get some Kim going, I think they're going to be hard to beat. But I'm not sure that happens. I can't, looking back now, I can't remember who I picked. Yeah, so.
You had Dallas losing to Philly on Sunday, and then you had Dallas beating Tampa on Tuesday.
Okay, yeah, so, if Dallas wins both those games, if they beat Philly, like I did not pick them to do, I think if they get some Kim going like that, they're going to be hard to beat. But I'm going to take Pittsburgh in the upset. Okay.
And there you have it. Those are the predictions for this week. So thank you, Hippo, for coming on and making those with us.
Yeah, guys, a little impromptu show up. I hope
works out for me.
The games on Thursday night. So we'll see you guys later this week.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, man.
Buddy disconnected from your channel.
All right, so that'll be it for the show there.
Yeah, that's it. Only 2 hours. So
yes, 2 hours. We probably would have cut it down a little bit more. I know Hippo was very active. We didn't actually expect him to show up, so I was expecting this to be over about like 15 minutes ago. But it's nice to have the perspective of somebody who's totally unbiased, and the perspective of like they're not even on an LHL team. So that's a bit interesting to see, and I kind of like the fact that there was only 2 games that all 3 of us picked the same team for. So that'll be nice. It should mean that no matter what either you or I wins this week, we won't have the same record each week like we did a lot last season.
Yeah.
So, but that's okay. So we'll see what happens. A little bit. I kind of want to change your predictions so that they're exact opposite of mine. Like, I don't want you stealing my predictions.
I mean, I went opposite with the Nordique Chicago on Sunday. I think Sunday's Tampa Bay is kind of unanimous. I went opposite with the Nordique Pittsburgh game. We're not opposite with the Chicago Philly game. I went opposite for the Nordique and Philly game.
You're a prediction stealer.
Kind of unanimously did. I'm not a prediction stealer.
You're a prediction stealer. That's what it is.
Great minds think alike, though.
Oh yeah. All right. Yeah. Sure.
Anyway, here's Wonderwall.
Oh my God. Literally a walking meme. Anyway, thank you, TikTok. Thank you, Hippo.
No problem.
Thank you to everybody who watches this at some point, and we will see you guys